Hello, and thank you for joining us for this special virtual town hall event, where we're joined by Macquarie University Vice Chancellor Professor Bruce Doughton, Vice President of People and Services Nicole Gower, and Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic Professor Kevin Jamison, to discuss and take questions on the university's response to the COVID-19 outbreak. My name is Rob Gunning, and I'm the university's Communications Director, and I'm hosting today's meeting. Today we'll start off with an overview from our panel on the university's position in relation to coronavirus, and we'll have a Q&A session where the panel will take your questions. To accommodate the submission of questions, we're using an alternative system which is different to the one that you may have received on your email invite. You can submit your questions today at any time during the session by visiting polev.com/VCMQ366. Please note the sign that we have in front of us here, which contains that web address. Our aim is to get through as many questions as possible in the time allowed, and we aim to follow up with answers to all of these questions following the event. So I'll begin. Vice Chancellor, thank you, and could we please kick this session off with an update as to our current response to COVID-19 and your perspective on the situation?
Sure, Rob. Thanks very much, and thank you to all of our students who chimed in today to receive this update. It's a busy time for us all at the university as we confront the potential for a rising epidemic of COVID-19 in Australia. And I want to assure you that the university leadership has been working very hard for weeks now on our contingency plan around a range of possibilities that might happen for us as a university. We have a dedicated group which I've been chairing, meeting every day, sometimes for many hours each day, to work up our response to the evolving circumstance as Australia does in fact confront the potential for a higher rate of infection across Australia. I want to pause here at the outset and just say a few words about the coronavirus infection itself. As a physician myself, I want to share with you some of the practical realities about this infection. It is a highly transmissible viral disorder, but it is one where most serious effects occur in older people, particularly those over the age of 65, or those who have other medical conditions that might predispose them to infection in their respiratory system for whatever medical reason. The infection appears to be quite mild in many young people, and in fact in some young people the infection is asymptomatic. It's important to remember whenever a university of the scale and complexity as ours is deals with an emergency or potential emergency situation as we're confronting with this COVID-19 epidemic, that we make a response which is proportionate, one which is realistic and one which is embedded in sound advice. I'm very pleased with the interactions we've had with the government agencies. They are the authoritative sources of information for us as we plan with them for how we as a university are responding to the situation as it plays out. We are in regular touch, particularly with New South Wales Health. I personally speak with the Chief Medical Officer and other senior officers of the Health Department on a regular basis, sometimes daily, as events are playing out on or around our campus. It's important to note that their advice to us, which we are following, is that for the moment, besides planning for what might happen going forwards, it is business as usual for the university. The university is open, we're conducting classes, and the research work of the university is ongoing. Some of you have written to me, particularly in recent days, to ask me about shouldn't we be closing the campus. The advice we've received and which we support is at the moment there is no reason for us to close the university campus. I'll come back a bit more later perhaps in questions about what does closure of the campus actually mean. Classes are going forwards, but there are some suggestions we have in place for you on our website from the homepage about how we can play our role to help mitigate or lessen the impact of the emerging epidemic. That is particularly around personal hygiene, hand washing and so on, which Nicole will talk about in a moment, but also around how we take a responsible position if we are not feeling well, particularly with respiratory illness of any sort, that we actually choose to not come and attend campus. The symptoms of the COVID-19 virus are very similar to many other respiratory infections that happen in the community every year at this time of the year. I wanted to also let you know that we have taken a number of steps to secure our campus in the eventuality that the infection does start to enter our community. Currently, there are no cases of COVID-19 on this campus. I'll come back to related to this campus very shortly. We have increased our cleaning regimes for the university campus in the last week or so, particularly paying important attention to high traffic areas, to the lecture rooms, to bathrooms, to food service areas particularly, and that will stay in place going forwards. I want to dwell for a moment on what we have actually had happen inside our university community over the last week or so. We have had one staff member who is returning from offshore who has been affected by the coronavirus, COVID-19. That staff member did not come to the university campus and had no contact with members of the university community. They acted very responsibly. They were not feeling well when they returned from overseas. They sought medical attention where the diagnosis was made and appropriate treatment instituted. Last week, you might have heard that we had concern raised at one of the daycare centres on campus, the Banksia Daycare Centre. A number of children from that centre were on a field trip to the neighbouring aged care facility. We stepped in very quickly, and with the assistance of New South Wales Health, all children who went on that field trip and staff were tested, and I'm pleased to report, as I did to you in my email last week, that none of those children ended up having been infected by the coronavirus. The state health authorities have been very actively involved on the adjacent aged care site in containing the infection there. You might also have heard about the closure of a high school in the area. That was an action taken by the New South Wales Health Department after, as I understand it, a single case was found there. Again, on our own campus, we have had no infected individuals on this campus. It is important that we do make a proportionate response and that we plan accordingly for what might happen as the potential of the epidemic escalates. Those plans are very well in place, and they cover a whole raft of possibilities around if the campus has a partial closure or full closure, what happens with classes, what happens if folks are unwell. So I'm really glad you're having a chance to chime in today. I want to assure you that the most important thing we are concerned about here is the health and safety of our own community, our students and our staff and other partner organisations. That is the most important thing which is driving all decision making inside the COVID-19 task force which I am leading. And today is an opportunity for you to hear from my colleagues and from me, and then to ask your questions through the website, which you can see in front of you. And any questions we don't get to here, we will collate those and provide answers to them in due course. Again, my thanks to you for chiming in today. I really appreciate student engagement with this virtual town hall.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. And Nicole, I know as Vice President for People and Services, you've certainly been kept busy over the course of the last couple of weeks. Perhaps you'd care to share an update from things from your perspective now.
Thank you, Rob. Well, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the safety and well-being of our students, our staff and members of our community. As the Vice Chancellor mentioned, the health, safety and well-being of our students, our staff and our community is our top priority at the moment and always. Like all universities, we have faced a number of questions and some decisions that we've needed to make over the previous few weeks. And all of those questions, all of those decisions have been made under the guidance of the Australian Government and New South Wales Health. They are the authority on public health issues, and we've been working very closely with them and will continue to do so. When we talk about health and wellbeing, I think it's also important to recognise that we talk about both physical health and wellbeing, but also psychological health and wellbeing, and I'd like to talk to both of those issues today. In terms of physical health and wellbeing, for students that are on campus at the moment, New South Wales Health have given the advice and guidance that it is safe to attend campus at the moment and that we should continue to operate as usual. So I think we can give you some reassurance today that it is safe to attend campus and that classes continue as usual. We should all follow good hygiene practices. As the Vice Chancellor mentioned, things like hand washing, either with hand sanitizer or with soap and water. Good hygiene practice is always important, and particularly at the moment. If you are feeling unwell, if you have fever, cough, sore throat, runny nose, or other respiratory symptoms, please don't attend campus. And of course, these symptoms are very common for other viruses and the common cold. So if you do experience these symptoms, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have COVID-19, but for the health and wellbeing of our whole campus, for our whole community, we would ask that you stay at home, take some time to rest and recover, and seek advice from your GP if needed. I would also ask that if you do have known medical issues, that you would please contact Accessibility, which is our group that works with students who might have particular needs or accommodations that might need to be made at this time. So if you do have existing medical conditions that might be relevant at the moment, please contact our Accessibility group. I want to talk a little bit about travel. Recently, the university has ceased international travel for staff and for students. This is a precautionary measure due to the rapidly evolving situation with COVID-19 across the globe. You might have heard some of the airports or ports have closed or changed their travel arrangements, and we want to ensure that we can ensure that any people travelling are safe. So for the moment, no international travel for students. Domestic travel is still permitted at this point in time. Those arrangements for international travel apply until the 4th of April this year, and we'll continue to review those arrangements over the coming weeks. If you are returning to Australia from travel overseas, we would also ask that you check the New South Wales Health website on any requirements or suggestions that they may have, particularly if you're coming from a significantly affected country. Now, New South Wales Health has included on their website a list of what they call higher impacted countries or higher risk countries. So you can check that list to see if that's one of the areas that you have come from and any guidelines or recommendations that they have for you when you return to Australia. With the situation changing regularly, it's really important to check those public health websites. In terms of psychological health and wellbeing, I also recognise that this is a very stressful time. There's a lot in the media, there's a lot that you might hear, and so it can be quite stressful when we start to talk about COVID-19. One of the things that we have been trying to do is to ensure regular and clear communication with you. And there's a range of ways that we have done that and a range of ways that you can find out information if you do have questions. So I'd like to briefly go through those so you know where you can find out information from. First of all, our website has a dedicated page on the coronavirus where all communications are listed, there's up-to-date information, and we're updating that website most of the time daily, sometimes multiple times each day. So that's a really good go-to point. If you have questions, if you have queries, check the website first and foremost. You can also email studentcare@nq.edu.au. If you have questions that you can't find the answer to, we have a team of people available to provide responses to your queries there. And outside of hours, you can also contact 1-800-CARE-NQ. That's 1-800-227-367. I know for some of you it might be stressful and you could be concerned and that you'd like access to counselling. Please remember too that you do have access to Campus Wellbeing, which provides counselling services for students. So if you do feel that you'd like access to a counsellor, please do go and see Campus Wellbeing. I'd like to reassure you that for us, the focus is on the health, safety and wellbeing of students in our community, and that we'll continue to focus on this in the weeks ahead. There's also one group that I'd like to speak specifically to today, and that is our casual staff. I know for many of you as students, you might work casually here in the university, in one of our retail outlets, or casually in one of our university work areas. And that this can be a particularly stressful time. I know a lot of casuals have said to me, you know, I'm worried about what might happen if the university does go into a partial or full close down. And so I wanted to speak a little bit about that today. At this time, I should reinforce we are continuing to operate business as usual. The campus is continuing to operate as usual at the moment. In the unusual circumstances that the university did need to close down for a period of time, our goal is to minimise impact on our casual staff. We recognise the loyalty and commitment of many of our casual staff and that you rely on your shifts at the university to meet day-to-day expenses. If we do move into a closed down scenario and we need to close down part of our campus, for some casuals, there may be the possibility of working from home. And for some of our casual staff, there may be arrangements around changing the timing of teaching commitments, for example, to work outside of the closed down period. For other casual staff and for students that might be working casually, it may not be possible to work from home. For example, if you're working in one of our cafes, or if you're on a frontline counter, it may not be possible to work from home. The university has taken the decision that for those staff, if the university is required to close down, that we would continue to pay casual staff for their rostered shifts for a period of up to 2 weeks during any close down period. If the close down proceeds longer than that, we would review the situation and go from there. I think those are the main issues that we have faced in the recent weeks for safety and wellbeing of students and the rest of our community. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks so much, Nicole, for that update. Kevin, moving to you as Deputy Vice Chancellor for our Academic Services. You've been engaged almost since day one on this, on the university's response. Perhaps I could ask you to provide some commentary on where we are with learning and teaching and the continuation of that.
Okay. Well, can I start with the comment that the Vice Chancellor made and Nicole made, which is our primary concern here, genuinely, is the welfare of our staff and our students. I know we've all said it and there's some risk of repetition, but we say it because we actually mean it. That is the primary driver of our response. And no one who's listening today should misunderstand that. That is what all this is about. So I won't go any further. That Nicole has dealt with that quite well in many respects. I want to talk more about your life on campus and your life in your courses. I want to talk about what this might mean for you. And I pick up the theme the Vice Chancellor introduced, which is none of us knows how this plays out. So we need to kind of keep open options as to what this looks like over the coming weeks and months. The first thing I want to say is, at the moment, it is business as usual. We have taken significant advice. We are responsive to the advice from the health authorities, New South Wales Health, and the very, very consistent advice is we can and should be operating, and that's what we are doing right now. So the courses are running as normal. The university is in most situations running as normal. When I say in most situations, what does that mean? It means that we're asking students, for example, who display symptoms of a cold or the flu, for example, to not come, and we do that for staff as well. So that's something that's a little bit different. If you've come from a significantly impacted country recently, we ask that you not attend big events, for example. There are some small changes, but mostly the university is operating as normal. And I really ask you to maintain your efforts in your courses right now. Because we don't know how this plays out, it's very, very important that people engage and take part in their life at university and work with us as the situation unfolds. So let me look at two different situations. Firstly, I'll look at what happens in your life outside the classroom and then your life inside the classroom. Maybe I can distinguish between those two situations. In your life outside the classroom, in your student life, there's lots of things going on. They are largely as normal. Events are still taking place, activities are still taking place. So I encourage you to engage and be involved, enjoy yourselves. Again, this should not be as much as possible, we want to maintain the quality of your experience at our university. That's very, very important to us. So please keep being involved, keep engaging. If that changes, you'll hear from us. We'll let you know, and we'll let you know on the basis of your health and safety. We're not going to do anything different to that. If we don't believe that's an appropriate response, we'll tell you, and we'll work with you to adjust. In the classroom, I want to talk a bit more about that in some more detail, because I understand that you're here to spend time at a fantastic university with our fantastic staff. You also want to complete your studies, finish your degrees, and move on to the next stage of your life. That's an important part of being at university, and that is why you're here with us. We want to, as much as we possibly can, make sure that continues. We don't want to have any impediments to that, to the extent we can avoid those impediments. So first piece of advice, keep coming to lectures, keep going to tutorials, keep going to labs, keep doing your assessment work, keep moving forward. We are doing a lot of work in the background at the moment as to what would happen if there was a close down of some kind. As Vice Chancellor says, a close down might be as little as closed for a day or 2 days to allow an assessment of the situation and then reopen. It might be more extensive. We don't know that right now, so we are planning for all those scenarios. We have some good recent experience in this. I think many students will know that we have a large group of students who couldn't come to us because travel bans are imposed that stop them arriving at our campus. We did some excellent work, I believe, with colleagues across the whole university to identify what units we could deliver online, and we turned those units online very, very rapidly with a principle, I stress, of high quality. This wasn't meant to be a low quality delivery mechanism. It was meant to be a high quality mechanism. I think we've done that. So we have some good recent experience as to how to turn units into online delivery. And to the extent we can, that's what we'll be doing if there is any kind of extended close down. But I stress that there is no anticipation right now of what that might be in detail. So we need to maintain all our scenarios as being possible. And you will certainly hear from us. You'll certainly get good information from us as that happens. It is a difficult time. I think it's difficult for staff as we try to anticipate scenarios. I don't doubt for a second that it can be stressful for many of you as you engage in this. I respect that, and I understand that, and I acknowledge that. To the extent we can do it, we will minimise the impact on you and your courses. That's a very, very important principle for us, and I can assure you that that's something that will receive a great deal of focus. There is a reality here that some courses are very amenable to be taken online, and in those cases we will do that, and we'll do that at high quality. Other courses require a great deal of face-to-face interaction, and they will be more difficult online. Again, you have my assurance that we understand the situation. We will be as flexible as we can, we'll be as open as we can, we'll try and find solutions, and where we can't find solutions, we won't let our processes get in the way of making sure you're supported in terms of academically, financially, in terms of support services. We're going to be as open and as positive in this with you as we possibly can be. So Rob, maybe I'll stop there and deal with some more issues through the questions.
Of course. Kevin, Nicole, Vice Chancellor, thank you for your summaries there. We'll move into the question and answer session. Vice Chancellor, first questions that are coming through in relation to potential scenarios for the closure of campus. You mentioned in your opening comments it's business as usual, but perhaps you could give some detail around what the trigger points may be that could close campus.
Yes, I think that the decisions around whether to close the campus or not would be ones that would be based in collaboration with New South Wales Health. As Kevin indicated, it could be a short closure where we're asked to close the campus for a day or two to allow New South Wales Health to make an assessment with their public health experts to guide us around whether we could reopen quickly or whether we would need to be on closed down for a longer period of time. Again, a lot of this will play out as time goes by, and the decisions around if there is a close down, what sort it would be, would reflect potential for some internal circumstances. If we had a case or two, where were they, how many people were likely in contact, how long were they on campus. This is a case management approach to a health response to an emerging epidemic like this. If a whole lot of people turned up with infection all of those years, a sudden, that's a different scenario. Or if 1 or 2 people had a contact with a lot of people, that's another scenario. So we will tailor the decisions with the authorities from the health department as to how we go about making the decisions around a closure of the campus, and if so, for how long. The other thing which may influence this decision may be things which don't have anything to do with this particular campus at all. They may be to do with how rapidly the epidemic spreads in Australia in general, if it does. You will have seen reports from other countries, perhaps, where universities have been closed. Those are national jurisdictions, by and large, where the capacity to contain the early phase of the epidemic has not been nearly as well thought about or organised as it has been in collaboration between the states in Australia and the Commonwealth Government, and the capacity to react quickly has not been as swift as the Australian circumstance has been. Many of those countries, for argument's sake, have not had any travel bans in place at all. Remember, if you would, that the vast majority of cases of COVID-19 in Australia are people who have come back from countries where the epidemic is more advanced, or those who have had close contact with such people who have come back to Australia. There is very little evidence to date of in-community transmission of the virus from one affected individual to the other if neither of those two circumstances are at play. And that's why we are making a proportionate response to this. It's a realistic response, it's proportionate. It focuses around getting that balance right between protecting the health, safety and well-being of every member of the Macquarie University community, but also keeping work going so that your expectations in terms of the progress of your studies and indeed the completion of your studies can be realised with the maximal potential. Some things may tip that balance one way or the other, where your personal safety, health and well-being overrides that other consideration of your progress through your degree. We will make those judgments very carefully and keep you well informed about them. And as Kevin has indicated, we are already well advanced in being able to react quickly with contingency plans, whatever the circumstance is, around being able to deliver your educational programs or to amend them to cope with whatever circumstance might come up.
Thank you for that, Vice Chancellor. Kevin, we've got a question through from a student here who's asking for advice of what type of contingencies plans we have in place for at-risk students that may be immunocompromised or needing to take extra care already, but do not obviously wish to delay their studies. Can you provide some advice, please?
Well, the key advice there is they should be in contact with our accessibility group, who will then provide advice, and they will provide ways of working through the courses. It depends on which course the student's in, so it's very hard to give specific advice. That wouldn't be appropriate. But we're aware of such a group. We deal with We deal with that group regularly. That's part of our business as usual. So that student should absolutely get in contact with our accessibility people, and they will find ways, the best possible ways they can do to support that student.
This is a well-trodden pathway. This is a pathway we go down each year with students who do have underlying immunodeficiency disorders where viral illnesses of the COVID type appear every year. So we are well experienced in being able to work with, on a case-by-case basis, individualising the response we would make for any particular student. That gets into, as Kevin says, the specifics of what course the student is in, how large are the classes, what is the nature of contact with other students, is it in practical laboratory settings or in an engineering studio, or is it in an arts program? Those things all play into how we tailor the individual responses for every particular student in that case. The key thing, as Kevin said, if that is you and you are not registered with the accessibility group at the university, do that quickly and we'll be able to get the processes we've had in place for years streamlined and behind you to support you.
Okay, thank you. We've had a question through in relation to face masks. So some students have noted that face masks are being worn to some extent on campus. And what's our most recent guidance in relation to face masks, Kevin?
Okay, so let me be very straightforward. This is actually a very important issue, and I want to be very straightforward with students, and we're happy with the staff as well. Our best advice from health authorities, and the Vice Chancellor may want to chip in a second, is that face masks of the retail variety are not helpful in preventing acquisition of a viral disease. They don't work, to be very blunt. There are face masks that do work, but they're a whole different category. They're more difficult to use. They need training, and they're really, quite frankly, aimed at healthcare workers. And we don't want to be thinking in terms of acquiring those face masks. They actually divert resource from people who need them most. If someone is sometimes you'll see them walking around campus, that most often demonstrates a person has a cold, and out of respect for other students, other staff members, other members of our community, they want to wear a face mask to reduce their impact on other people. And face masks are useful that way. In the current situation though, we are advising students and staff members who do have symptoms of colds or flus to actually stay away. That's our preference in the current situation. I think a heightened response is appropriate right now, and I think if you do have a cold, you do have flu, or you have those symptoms, you stay away until they resolve. So to be very clear, we don't believe that providing face masks is appropriate, and that's not part of our planning.
Thank you. I mean, certainly we're receiving some comments on the general fear and anxiety out there. We have one rather specific question, and I think it's important to raise it from a student who's recently found out that she's pregnant and wonders if there's any additional thoughts or guidance you should be thinking in relation to that.
Those are areas where your first port of call for advice there would be through your physician, your obstetrician, or your GP who is taking care of your pregnancy. I think in general, again, the same rules would apply in terms of being scrupulous about attention to personal hygiene, avoiding anyone who obviously close contact with anyone who has an obvious respiratory illness. What do we mean by close contact? You should be more than 1 metre away from such individuals. You would do well also to avoid being in crowded areas when you don't need to be in crowded areas. So on campus, be careful about areas that might ordinarily have crowds of students or students and staff in them. Those very sensible, same sorts of issues that we are advocating for everyone just need to be stepped up in your particular circumstance. Again, the most authoritative advice for your particular circumstance, depending on the stage of your pregnancy, would come from your obstetrician, your midwife, or your general practitioner.
Thank you. Kevin, may I return back to you? I have a question here from a student who poses the question. If they feel unwell, potentially with symptoms COVID-19, and just follow our guidance not to attend class, they're concerned that that may impact their participation mark, and they would like to know, are we taking that into consideration, or do we need to continue to seek a doctor's note each time?
Okay, so it's worth recording that we have about 1,800 units in operation at the moment, so it's very hard to provide a very, very general answer across all those units. I will say very specifically, and my encouragement to my colleagues will be as follows: we need to take a generous approach to this. I've got no desire on my part, and I'm sure I speak for all of us here, to take a compliance-based or an authoritarian view of this and saying, if you don't meet our requirements, it's got to be, the consequences will be this. My advice is you stay away. You should record the fact you stayed away because of these symptoms through the special consideration, the normal channels. You should do that. And I think at that point you might want to provide some, get some feedback as to what medical certification might be required in that case. But my guidance to my colleagues is going to be not to get too wrapped up in those issues in the very short term.
And I think with that particular one, if you are forced to be out because you want to take a responsible position by not coming to classes or be on campus if you're unwell, take the initiative early on and put the special consideration in. Don't wait until you find out your exam results and then go back and try to recreate it all. Be proactive. Do what you're suggesting, which is be thoughtful about being away from the community if you are potentially infectious with any respiratory viral illness, but also take the initiative to record the special consideration circumstances when they're fresh in your mind, when you have the dates, and if you need to, having medical certification.
Thank you. And Nicole, question for you. We have some questions coming through in relation to the staff that are employed by the university. Students keen to understand what provisions we're taking to allow them from working from home and that's developing. Could you spend a little bit of time talking about staff and working from home?
I guess the first thing to say is, from our discussions with staff, they are very committed to ensuring that we can keep business as usual. They're very committed to their students. They're committed to ensuring that classes can continue. And so a lot of the questions that we have from staff are how can they ensure that things continue to operate. They're also very conscious of ensuring a safe environment for students in the classroom. So the same sorts of arrangements that would apply to students about not coming into a classroom if you're not feeling well, those same arrangements apply to our staff. Sometimes our staff are able to work from home to ensure that your classes and marking and those things can continue as usual. Sometimes they might be taking sick leave, and then we work with other staff to make sure that arrangements can continue as well. I think it's important for you to know we're regularly communicating with all of our staff, our academic staff, lecturers, tutors, people here casually working with us as tutors, all staff who are involved in your education. We're ensuring that we communicate regularly with them so they know all of the arrangements that are in place, they know exactly what to do, they know what arrangements are available to them so that they can stay safe and well, but also to make sure that you can continue your studies and that there's no interruption there. So we're working very much with our staff. I think they know the arrangements, they'll know what to do, and we're very flexible in our approach to ensure that they can continue doing their work and supporting you with your study.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chancellor, perhaps a question for you. We have a question too in relation to scheduled field work that may be taking place. If we extend the travel ban further into April, can you provide some comments on scheduled field work for local and international students?
So first of all, again, there's not one size fits all here. So field work could be either international in destination or domestically. At the moment, there's no restriction on domestic travel, so field work would be able to go forwards there. One of the things, just I'll dwell on that for a moment, is urge you to be thoughtful about how you approach field work if it is going forward domestically. If it's a geology field trip to a site where the only people you will have contact with are another group of students and a staff member or two who are all well, then obviously the concern is much less than if you are on a fieldwork program that might have you going into the central business district of Sydney, where there are lots of people likely to be around in a particular business setting. Again, in that latter circumstance, we think it should go forward, it shouldn't be cancelled, but you should heighten your awareness of paying scrupulous attention to personal hygiene. Hand washing, if you are at all ill, don't go along to that particular activity. As far as international field work or outbound experiences offshore, at the moment we have restricted that sort of travel. That is until April the 4th. We will be reviewing that on a week-by-week basis and potentially renewing that prohibition on outbound travel on a weekly basis. We decided to do that to give the authorities time to see how the epidemic is transiting in Australia, see how fast it comes to Australia, whether it peaks quickly and dies down, or that it has a more flat time course. And there are good reasons for reacting in a different way depending on each of those circumstances. So at the moment, we will not be allowing outbound travel for field work outside Australia. If it is scheduled to happen before April the 4th, likely to update that advice with a further extension of a week very soon, and it will be happening on a week-by-week basis. If there are costs incurred as a result of that, the university will be very supportive if travel has to be cancelled and if our insurance is not covering that.
Thank you. Nicole, maybe I'll ask, I'm sure we all may have a view on this, but we have a question in relation to university contingency planning. I know that's something we've all been participating in over the course of the last week, but perhaps you could just give an update as to where we are with our contingency plan should the situation deteriorate.
Sure. So we have got a task force that meets daily in relation to planning around COVID-19, and at the moment we have planned for a whole range of different scenarios. So it's hard to talk about any precise arrangement because there's lots of different scenarios that might emerge. So the way that we approach it is, if this, then how will the university respond? Everything from arrangements for students, arrangements for staff, ensuring that we have appropriate IT systems in place, all of those things form part of the remit of our task force. And really the goal of that group is to plan for a whole range of different circumstances that might emerge. The best case scenario is if we never have to use any of those arrangements, but we like to be prepared. That's the crucial thing, is that we're prepared for a whole range of different circumstances. We map out the variety of circumstances that could occur, and that we plan for each and every one of those. And that's what we're doing at the moment. So there's a group of us that are very involved in that and meet daily to monitor those activities.
It's a group which I chair personally, and we are following the format that one uses in any emergency preparedness situation. So there are certain stages we go through. The first one of those is preparedness. We had a phase 1 of our response, which was largely addressing the concerns about our students from China who are unable to join us here on campus. We very much look forward to being able to welcome them back to the university campus. That was phase 1, to deal with those particular circumstances, and particularly the DVCA portfolio and colleagues across the university, and an enormous amount of output and good work there to be able to deliver online programs for those students. Phase 2 has followed the standard raft of work that starts with preparedness, moves into standby for action when it's required, then moves into action, immediate and medium term, and then a stand down and a recovery phase. We are already well into all of that planning. For many of those areas, we are on standby, ready to move quickly if we have to. For some, because of the evolving nature of the virus epidemic, we are still in the preparedness phase where we're working up those contingency plans. I'm personally very confident in where we're up to with our planning for this. In some cases, we are already working on the recovery phase. For argument's sake, what happens when our students from China can rejoin us as part of the Macquarie community? We're already giving thought to how we might welcome them to campus, provide an orientation, induct them into the life of the university if they are new students. So all of these orderly steps are well in progress at the right stage.
Thank you. I may just return to the question around campus shutdown. We're having 1 or 2 comments come through just saying, wouldn't it be more sensible to shut down now as a precaution to stop the spread? Perhaps I could ask you to elaborate on.
It's a good question, and it's one we talk about every day. It's one where we do make that balanced judgment in keeping the campus working on the one hand to enable students to progress forward. There are many students who've been in touch with us saying, this is where my life is up to. I have this plan of how I need to get through my course by X time or Y time. I have these constraints that are personal or family or work-related. And so we are respecting finding at the moment a balanced set point between keeping the campus with as much business as usual, with heightened awareness around preventive issues, as we've all talked about, at the same time as protecting the health, safety and well-being of every member of the university campus. I remind us all that for most young people, COVID-19 is a mild or asymptomatic illness. And if you take another jurisdiction in the world, for argument's sake, if you look at the influenza outbreak that is happening in the United States right now, and influenza outbreaks occur regularly across the world. There's one active in the US right now, as there often is at this time of the year. Well more than 10,000 people have died from influenza in the US in this season, in the last 3 or 4 months. That has attracted almost no media attention at all. The number of people who have died from COVID-19 is far less than that. So this is why we make a balanced, proportionate response and don't overreact on the one hand or underreact and interfere with the orderly progress of your lives being able to move forward.
Thank you. Kevin, I might switch to you now. We have students inquiring about the submission of thesis or various study programs that they may be on, and saying that they need access to university facilities as part of the process of that. What are the type of things we may be considering to help students along with that?
Again, it's a potentially very, very broad question, so it depends on precise circumstances. I mean, it is true to say though, and I say this without any hesitation, we will do our very, very best to make sure that access is available. It will depend on by their nature, theses are quite specific, so it will come down to a particular resource probably. We'll have to have conversations about what that resource is and what's the best way of providing access to that particular student.
Okay.
But again, a design principle, as I said, the Vice Chancellor said, is we don't want to get in the way of students completing. The students are on a mark, they're on a timetable. There's often cost involved. There's personal life issues around those things. We don't want to get in that way, and to the extent we can support those students in completing on time, we will certainly do that.
So let's just talk for a moment. It's important to amplify a little bit. What do we actually mean by a shutdown of the university? What a shutdown is not is closing the university campus up, locking all the doors, and we all go home. That is not what a shutdown is going to be. That would only happen in the most extreme circumstances, and I quite frankly can't imagine that happening in this circumstance. What a shutdown means is it may be partial. It may be working with New South Wales Health. They may say, we don't want you having large gatherings of more than 50 people, classes of more than 50 people concentrated in one classroom where a virus might be passed around by someone sneezing. It may be more complete in terms of their advice, and working with us, we may decide we shouldn't be holding any classes. But that doesn't mean the campus shuts down completely. We're already working on and have the plans in place for staff who will need to be available to be on campus in addition to those working remotely. There are a range of staff around facilities, around making sure the IT systems of the university still work. The student call centres need to maintain active. For our staff and for our casual staff who might be students, the payroll function of HR needs to be working. So there are a whole range. The communications department needs to stay working. So shutdown is a relative term, and one of the things that we will be doing in answer to this specific question is looking at the particularities of how we try to maximise being able to, most importantly, protect the health, safety and well-being of our community, and do that in a way which is responsible for the local community around North Ryde, but also the wider Australian community, depending on the stage of the epidemic, but also to protect as much of the work being able to go forward as we possibly can. And that's where those things will need to be sorted out for PhD students on an individual basis, depending upon the nature of your work and the access you might need in order to get your thesis completed.
Thank you. We have a question in relation to domestic student exchange programs as well. I mean, clearly you've taken some steps around international travel, non-domestic at the moment. Is there any comments you can provide us at the moment in relation to that?
I'm not aware of any restrictions right now on domestic exchange. Now, this is a very fluid situation. You would need to check with us and also check with the partner university, because there's two sides to an exchange, clearly. But at the moment, I don't see any obstacles to that.
But those are the sort of things that may change quite quickly. And I emphasise again, the most authoritative place for up-to-date information is our website on the home page of the university.
Thank you. Nicole, we've also had a question in relation to any additional cleaning procedures that we may or may not be taking place. Obviously, people concerned around high traffic areas, for example. Could you provide us with an outline of what we're doing there?
Sure. So the university has made changes to its cleaning practices on campus and has doubled our efforts, particularly in high traffic areas. We've been working with our cleaning providers to ensure particularly areas like high volume lecture theatres, bathrooms, high traffic areas. We have extra cleaning arrangements in place. Food service areas are another one of those areas. So it is something that we're particularly conscious of, and we have made efforts in that area.
Okay. We also have many students as well, Vice Chancellor, coming to campus via public transport. And that's one of the, you've been in contact with government officials on this, but any guidance in relation to public transport coming into campus?
Again, at the moment, the advice from the government or authorities is that we should have folks maintain using public transport as they have been doing. But again, remember that public transport is a place where people touch a lot of surfaces. So again, stepping up, escalating the hand washing regime or using hand sanitizers. And if you can't find access to sanitizers, alcohol-based hand sanitizers, good old hand washing with warm water and soap is going to serve you very well. So The suggestion I would be making about if you are using public transport, there's no reason to stop using public transport. Just pay particular attention to personal hygiene. Wash your hands or use hand sanitizer when you get off as soon as you can. Don't touch your mouth, your nose, your eyes, your face until you have a chance to wash your hands or use hand sanitizer.
Again, to a follow-up question with that, I have a student asking here whether we should increase the amount of signage that exists around campus. I know we've taken some steps in the library and sports centre with signage, but thoughts on that?
We've certainly increased having signage around campus, but we again are making a balanced choice here between getting regular information, sometimes every day, out to you all by email and posted on our social media sites for students. That's the way you communicate these days, a lot more than perhaps email. But also we don't want to be alarmist about this and have the campus draped in warning signs that might cause panic or cause unnecessary anxiety. It's all part of a very balanced, very carefully thought out AE approach towards where's that right set point, bearing in mind it may change quickly. If there is a sense that the epidemic is gathering hold in Australia faster than we might want it to or anticipate that it will, we will step these things up and we are well prepared to do that.
Thank you. Looks like we have a question from one of our Chinese students, potentially one of those that are currently in China at the moment. And Kevin, they're asking whether they need to come to campus at the moment if that's via a third country. Could you give some guidance as to where we are with that?
So repeat the question. The question is about...
Yeah, so whether the student is asking whether they need to come to campus at the moment and or via a third country.
Yeah, maybe students who are even in a third country now who've chimed in here today.
Okay.
Still come.
Absolutely come, and you're welcome, and it's important you do that. There will be, in any scenario, there'll be certain things, protocols to observe, imposed by governments in different stages. For example, if you come via a third country, or some countries you can't transit through at the moment, others you can, but we'll take some particular precautions when you arrive to make sure you're fit and well, you don't have any symptoms, and we might ask you just to monitor yourself for a little while and not get involved in any large gatherings when you do arrive. But to the extent you can, and you're on that journey, as Vice Chancellor says, we want you to...
we welcome you back as soon as we can.
Kevin, I might ask you as well, just to follow up on your comments around the provision of online courses. Clearly, we've done a lot of work already to provide online courses for students that have been active in China. Can you give us an update as to how that's going? One of the questions here is asking what type of progress we're making with that.
Okay, so let me answer in two ways. The first narrow way, well, there's two different ways I can answer. We've already done a piece of work along these lines to respond to students who are in China who couldn't come and join us because of the travel bans that were imposed. So we do have good experience, and we've demonstrated a good ability to take units, do a quick triage, understand what are the important parts of that unit, and how we're going to take those elements of the unit online. And take them online at quality. I want to keep stressing this is not a poor cousin to our face-to-face capability. We want to do this well and want to do it at a high degree of quality. So that's a narrow project. Now the project widens to a scenario where many, many more units need to be online. So there is a significant project that's running right now, literally right now. There are people who are going through all our delivery methods and all our assessment methods to work out what are the ways we could move those to online. So it will be things like recording lectures, putting those lectures online. That's an easy thing to do. When we're talking about tutorials or seminars, we'll need to find an interactive way so students can keep interacting through small groups, through an online mechanism. Assessment is a very significant piece of work right now. Assessment, you can guess, has significant challenges, but we need to work out the extent and how we're going to deal with those assessment tasks in an environment where perhaps there is a closure. Now, none of these has simple answers, and some of these are going to take, won't have an answer on day one. They'll need to be worked through over time, and that's the work we're doing at the moment. It's also worth being clear that there are some units and some courses that will be quite adversely impacted. I don't want to leave any false impression. I want to be honest with students who are listening. If you're involved in a unit or a course that has a very high degree of, it's a clinical course, for example, or a course that has a high degree of face-to-face requirement, it's inherent to the course there's a high face-to-face component. That is going to be more problematical. In that situation, we're going to be straightforward with you, let you know that early so you're not left wondering, and provide you with the most flexible and generous way of dealing with that over a session. I think it's been implicit in what we say, but let me say it very, very clearly. This will end. This will end. This is something we'll look back on. I'm old enough to have lived through a number of crises of different kinds in my life, and I look at my colleagues here and I think it's the same thing. This will pass. We'll look back on this as a difficult time, a challenging time, but a time I think that we'll all, both students and staff, will think we accomplished something together. But we need to just day by day, steadily move us forward in this environment.
The other thing I'd add on there, Kevin, is we already have many hundreds of units that are already available to be deployed online, or that have significant online components to them. The issue that you've raised there about students who might have a high degree of face-to-face classes, practical laboratories or clinical practicums, we have ways we can work with the staff around those. We could bring forward the online components to be utilising that time that you might have had scheduled if there is a close down for more of the lecture classes, online being brought forward and being able to flow out then when the campus reopens a more intense phase of the practical laboratory experience. So these are all things that are part of very actively of our contingency planning now, and I'm confident we'll be able to work this through to its natural endpoint. As Kevin has said, this will end. These epidemics have a life cycle to them. It's already of interest, I'm sure, for you to note that far more new cases of coronavirus are now happening outside China than inside China. So the China epidemic is on the wane down, which is very pleasing to see, particularly for our students and their families who've had their lives so disrupted.
I think we just probably have time for one final question before we need to wrap up. We just have an interesting question through here on wanting to know what our day looks like individually on the panel at the moment in relation to the issue. Perhaps you could provide just a quick summary of what you're doing on a day-by-day basis. Clearly we know this, but I'm sure...
Why just day, why not night as well?
There are several shifts a day being worked at the moment in my life. I chair the task force. If I take late last week, for example, I was in that for 8 to 10 hours a day. My regular day job got done at night. It's long days at the moment, but it's we're all very committed to the well-being of the university, and this is a fabulous university, and you certainly have all of my personal commitment to work just as hard as I can to lead us through what is a challenging time.
Nicole.
For me, so combination of working with the task force on coronavirus and working through all of those planning things, but also keeping the life of the university going. So you might be aware this week is Gender Equity Week. We have a whole range of events and activities that I'll be involved in this week. And so it's important that the life of the university continues, that we continue all of those important activities that mean so much about being part of a university. So for me, it's a combination of planning and business as usual.
It's not a different answer particularly. I mean, a lot of my time, again, I have a normal part of my work I need to keep going, and as well as this coronavirus response. I find in practice what happens, I've got fantastic colleagues in my portfolio and the faculties who are doing fantastic work. It's not my role to get in their way and to interfere in the work they're doing. My role tends to be one of coordination and trying to look across the whole institution and making sure that things join up. But there are a lot of people doing fantastic work. But I might say one more thing if I can, just on the back of that. Can I ask our students to do one thing for us? We're doing a lot, and we want to do a lot to support you, and that work is taking place. Do one thing for us. Be kind to each other. Let's be really kind to each other. This is a very stressful situation for members of staff, for students. Everyone's got different contexts, everyone's got different situations, everyone feels this in different ways. You know, this is no time for profiling of people in their conditions or their ethnicity and saying, you know, you're the source of this, or there's something particular. We're all in the boat together. We're all dealing with this together as a community. And it's not just our community, the country deals with this, the world deals with this. You know, we're all part of a much bigger response. So the thing you can do for us is be kind to each other.
think that's a wonderful note on which to close. Thank you, Kevin, Nicole, Vice Chancellor, for your participation today, and thank you for everybody that's tuned in.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you all for chiming in today. Thanks so
Thank you.
much.